sometimes, you know. What else can we do when we're feeling low? So take a deep breath and let it go. You shouldn't be drowning on your own. And if you feel you're sinking, I will jump right over into cold, cold water for you. And although time may take us into different places, I will still be patient with you. And I hope you know I won't let go. I'll be your lifeline tonight. I won't let go. I'll be your lifeline tonight. 'Cause we all get lost sometimes, you know. It's how we learn and how we grow. And I wanna lay with you till I'm old. Oh, you shouldn't be fighting on your own. And if you feel you're sinking, I will jump right over into cold, cold water for you. And although time may take us into different places, I will still be patient with you. And I hope you know I won't let go. I won't let go. No, 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 no. I'll be your lifeline tonight. I won't let go. I'll be your lifeline tonight.
Come on, save me from a rocking boat. I just wanna stay afloat. I'm all alone. And I hope that someone's gonna take me home. Somewhere I can rest my soul. I need to know you won't let go.
I won't let go. No, 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 no. I'll be your lifeline tonight.
Ladies and gentlemen, our session will resume in 10 minutes.
I'll be your lifeline tonight. I won't let go. I won't let go. Lately, I've been thinking, I want you to be happier. I want you to be happier. When the morning comes and we see what we've become. In the cold light of day, we're a flame in the wind, not the fire that we begun. Every argument, every word we can't take back. 'Cause with all that has happened, I think that we both know the way that the story ends. Then only for a minute, I want to change my mind, 'cause this just don't feel right to me. I wanna raise your spirits, I want to see you smile, but no, that means I'll have to leave. No, that means I'll have to leave. Lately, I've been thinking, I want you to be happier. I want you to be happier. When the evening falls and I'm left there with my thoughts, and the image of you being with someone else, well, it's eating me up inside. But baby, we ran our course, we pretended we're okay. Now if we jump together, at least we can swim far away from the wreck we made. Then only for a minute, I want to change my mind, 'cause this just don't feel right to me. I wanna raise your spirits, I want to see you smile, but no, that means I'll have to leave. No, that means I'll have to leave. Lately, I've been thinking, I want you you to be happier. So I'll go, I will go. So I'll go, I will go. Lately, I've been thinking, I want you to be happier. I want you to be happier. Even though I might not like this, I think that you'll be happier. I want you to be happier. Then only for a minute, I want to change my mind, 'cause this just don't feel right to me. I wanna raise your spirits, I want to see you smile. No, that means I'll have to leave. No, that means I'll have to leave. Lately, I've been thinking, I want you to be happier. I want you to be happier. So I'll go, I will go. Whoa, hey, whoa.
I've been waiting on the sunset, bills on my mindset. I can't deny it, getting higher than my income. Income's breadcrumbs. I've been trying to survive. The glow that the sun gets right around sunset helps me to realize that this is just a journey. Drop your worries, you are gonna turn out fine. Oh, you turn out fine. Fine, oh, you turn out fine. But you gotta keep your head up, oh, and you can let your head down, hey. You gotta keep your head up, oh, and you can let your head down, hey. I know it's hard, to remember sometimes, but you gotta keep your head up, oh, and you can let your head down, hey, 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 hey. I got my hands in my pockets, kicking these rocks. It's kinda hard to watch this life go by. I'm buying into skeptics mess with the confidence in my eyes. I'm seeing all the angles, thoughts get tangled. I start to compromise my life and my purpose. Is it all worth it? Am I gonna turn out fine? Oh, you turn out fine. Fine, oh, you turn out fine. But you gotta keep your head up, oh, and you can let your head down, hey. You gotta keep your head up, oh, and you can let your head down, hey. I know it's hard, to remember sometimes, but you gotta keep your head up, oh, and you can let your head down, hey, hey, hey. Only rainbows after rain, the sun will always come again, and it's a circle, circling around again. It comes around again. I say only rainbows after rain, the sun will always come again, and it's a circle, circling around again. It comes around, but you gotta keep your head up, oh, and you can let your head down, hey. You gotta keep your head up, oh, and you can let your head down, hey. I know it's hard, to remember sometimes, but you gotta keep your head up, oh, and you can let your head down, hey. And keep your head up, and you can let your head down, and keep your head up, and you can let your head down, and keep your head up, and you can let your head down. Listen, oh, no, 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 no.
Ladies and gentlemen, we'll start back in about 5 minutes. Thank you.
You and I against the world. That's what you told me that night in the terminal as we were boarding. And I know you meant it, holding my hand so tight as we flew from Lafayette back to Pacific time. And you laid your head on my shoulder, couple tears we shed over Arizona, an emotional roller coaster, yeah. We ride the highs and lows, we ride the highs and lows. You'll never be alone, even when your world explodes, 'cause after all the smoke clears, I will be right here. I will be right here when the smoke clears. I will be right here when the smoke clears. And when I hit the wall back in December, I took my hardest fall, but we fell together and we spent the weekend pacing the hotel room at the West End in Dublin. Never felt so close to you, and I laid my head on your shoulder. By the time we left, we were 10 years older, an emotional roller coaster, yeah. We ride the highs and lows, we ride the highs and lows. You'll never be alone, even when your world explodes, 'cause after all the smoke clears, I will be right here. I will be right here when the smoke clears. I will be right here.
Ladies and gentlemen, at this time, please find your seats. We'll begin momentarily.
We ride the highs and lows, we ride the highs and lows. You'll never be alone, even when your world explodes, 'cause after all the smoke clears, I will be right here. I will be right here when the smoke clears.
Will you hold the line when every one of them is giving up and giving in? Tell me, in this house of mine, nothing ever comes without a consequence of cost. Tell me, will the stars align? Will heaven step in? Will it save us from our sin? Will it? 'Cause this house of mine stands strong. That's the price you pay. Leave behind your heart and cast away.
Ladies and gentlemen, at this time, please take your seats. Welcome back to the stage, Beverly Francis Gibson.
So we are ready to resume our conference. Please grab your seats, your refreshments, because the next session is actually going to be really cool. So let me introduce our next session, which will feature a panel of individuals living with sickle cell disease and caregivers discussing the most pressing topics for them personally and within the board of the sickle cell community. This is going to be an informative and moving session. I'm setting you up, Dr. Andemariam. High expectations. Hi. So Dr. Biree Andemariam, who is Associate Professor in the Department of Medicine at the University of Connecticut, will be moderating this session. And our panelists are 4 prominent voices in the sickle cell advocacy community. Joining me on stage are Dr. Biree Andemariam, Joelle DeBon, Andre Harris, and Hertz Nazir. Now I will turn it over to Dr. Andemariam.
Was I sitting next to you? Okay. There was somebody else. Velvet. Velvet. There.
She was there. Well, good morning, panelists. Good morning, everybody in the audience. We are here to talk about hot topics. And we have a distinguished panel of individuals either living with sickle cell disease or caring for someone near and dear to them with sickle cell disease. So I have a series of questions. We're gonna make this like we're sitting in a living room and hear really from the heart and minds of our experts and advocates on the issues. So first of all, Andre.
Hello.
Hello. In an ideal world, what issues would a sickle cell treatment address?
In my opinion, in an ideal world, the sickle cell treatment would address one of the issues that I feel the community is concerned about, which is organ damage. And then also chronic pain are the probably two most important issues that we hear chatter or buzz about in the community, is how to prevent or treat the organ damage. Or how to prevent or treat the chronic pain.
I think that's really interesting, Andre, because I think a lot of people would assume that the answer to this question would be around acute pain. How informed do you think individuals living with sickle cell disease are about issues around chronic organ damage?
So for me, I think, again, as a survivor living with sickle cell, and then also as an advocate, I think that's why we're very interested in learning about different therapeutics that will address those issues. Right. Because for me personally, we just don't have that knowledge, that education really about the organ damage. I'm educated on a lot of other things, but when it comes to how to prevent organ damage or how to treat the already onset of organ damage, that's something that I feel like could be heightened in our community.
I see. Yeah. Velvet. As a caregiver, as a mother, I'll ask you the same question. In an ideal world, what issues would a sickle cell treatment address?
Good morning, everybody. I think that the topic that we discussed earlier is one of the biggest topics I think needs to be addressed. The neurological aspects of individuals living with sickle cell. As a mother, I can see my son in a lot of those slides. Okay. And I understand the impact of a child being hypoxic, those that have cognitive delays. And so I would love to see treatment and interventions around that. Yeah.
I hear you. Can you give us a little bit of information on what you've seen either with your son or with the other families in terms of the impact of cognitive dysfunction sort of on everyday experiences?
Well, I think that many people living every day with sickle cell, it's a challenge. And as a parent, trying to navigate the educational system for children that may have delays can be very heartbreaking, and it can be very challenging to make sure they're giving the appropriate education that they need. And when you have not only those maybe in the medical community that may not be addressing this because maybe it's something that just hasn't come up yet, but especially those in the education system that have no idea of actually what's going on or how to help your child, it can be discouraging. And so I think that's why having treatment options and research is so important to being able to, number one, acknowledge the issue. Number two, find ways to provide intervention so that parents have a tool that they can give to their schools or working in conjunction with their provider, that they can come up with the best plan to have the best outcome.
Yeah, I hear you. Now, switching gears, where do you see the most need for treatments that currently isn't being addressed?
That's for me? For me, my idea is that the treatments that we need are usually treatments that it's kind of hard because for me it's not about the pain, but like I lost my vision. I'm an artist, so I lost my vision, and I don't feel like we have enough education where it says that we connect these things, connect these dots. Like my vision, my effects with priapism. There are certain things that we don't talk about that we need to discuss more often in this community.
Yeah, yeah. So what I'm hearing, I'm hearing sort of a theme emerge that you know, we spend a lot of time talking about pain.
Right.
We have your artwork that perfectly depicts what it really means to experience pain, right? 10 Redefined. But I'm still hearing that there are issues being faced by individuals living with sickle cell disease that are beyond the acute pain, beyond what we
So
as clinicians see most and spend the bulk of our time talking to patients about.
Yeah, we focus so much on pain. It's like I feel like these other aspects get ignored. It's like there's so many. Like my mental health is also something that I really need to focus on, you know, because it affects your quality of life.
Right.
You know, like and my vision, priapism, and my mental health.
Right.
These are very important things.
Yeah, and thank you for sharing that. I know that those are very sensitive issues now.
Yeah.
Joelle, is there anything you wanted to add in terms of what you would like to see in a treatment or things that aren't being addressed currently?
I think for me, fatigue is my biggest factor.
Okay.
So I would really want to see a medicine help with that. I can push through the pain. You know, I push through the pain every day. But when I can't get out of bed or, you know, do the things that I need to do as a young adult, that is more devastating to me than being in pain.
And being in pain. So the fatigue, it really impacts your ability to do the things that you want to do on a daily basis sometimes.
Yeah.
And Velvet, just speaking as a mother, do you see that in your son? Does it start, is it just being an adult and being busy and getting, you know, or is it something that you think impacts even the children?
Oh no, I think it impacts many children. The fatigue.
Okay.
I tell people it takes me 30 minutes to get my son up, and that's after I've gone in 2 or 3 times. I'm going in every 10 minutes, trying to wake him up, arouse him to come to conscious, to get ready for school. And there are days he just says, "Mom, I'm just tired. I am just tired." And so at that point I have to say, okay, well, I guess there's no school today. We're gonna homeschool today or do something different, but allowing him to rest, and he can sleep for hours. I think that was one of the things that nobody kind of explained to us when we were diagnosed, is that some of the symptoms that you see that are not necessarily those that would hospitalize the patient really does impact your quality of life. It impacts your everyday function. And so he can sleep 8, 10 hours at the drop of a hat, and you're thinking what's wrong, and nothing's necessarily wrong. He's just tired.
I see. Okay. Andre.
Okay.
What is your definition of safe?
So I would define safe, and we're talking about for therapeutic options or just in general?
Well, both.
Okay, so.
But in the context of therapy, either existing, like an existing therapy. So I'll say there could be two answers. And you can feel free to give both if you want. So safe in the context of, say I'm your doctor and I'm saying, here's a medication I think you should try.
Yeah.
So what's your definition of what you think is safe in that context? And then secondly, what if I'm talking to you about a clinical trial and asking you potentially to participate in a clinical trial? What's your definition of safe in that context? And does it change? Is it the same?
It definitely does change, and everyone is different. For me personally, excuse me, because of the intimate relationship I've built with my treatment team, my doctors, the research staff at the institution that I belong to, safe for me would be if my provider did introduce something to me, I wouldn't be as skeptical to try it because we're so close that I trust them to be able to present something to me that I know that they would understand that I would be interested in and that I would want to try. But also in the same vein as clinical trials, I believe it also speaks to having people that have done it before, who's been there before. So if maybe you had someone that had experienced it before, then that would be something that would define it as safe for me. However, we definitely understand that our community, they're not always like that, and we have to respect people's differences and boundaries. Some people are just inherently mistrusting of the medical community, so we would have to find other ways to convince them of the safety of what we're trying to introduce. But personally for me, I have that relationship where if my doctor presented it to me or the research team presented it, I would feel safe.
Yeah. So I'm hearing the connection with your provider is instrumental.
Yeah, I believe it's
in your perception of what's safe in general, whether it's in the context of approved medication or a clinical trial. Okay. Velvet?
As a parent, for me, the first thing I want to talk about is do no harm. So that's what I'm looking for when I think about things that are coming down the pipeline. Is it an asset or is it a liability? Because as a parent, our first thing is the safety of our children. We want to make sure whatever they're taking is going to be safe and it's not going to harm them or produce more burden on the family.
Yeah.
And I think when we think about those therapeutics that are coming out or that are already here, we want to make sure that children are going to be able to tolerate them. So I do think about that when it comes to him. Can he tolerate this? What are other factors that he may be dealing with, and how will those therapies interact with issues he's already having?
Yeah.
And is that going to put my family in more of a situation where we are more stressed or more overwhelmed?
Okay.
My word for safe would be to lessen the stress.
Okay. Not add to it.
Not add to it.
Okay, I hear you. Naz, what's your take? Because we were talking yesterday. I think you had a slightly different viewpoint on safe.
My viewpoint on it is that if I'm taking a treatment, treatment that I take is I set a goal to get better. So I don't want to take any kind of treatment that would add or take away any progression. Like taking a step back, taking a step forward with one treatment, but you also take a step back with the side effects.
Okay.
So I don't want any side effects that affects my goals or quality of life in that way. So my definition of safe is something that always helps me to take a step forward.
Okay. Okay. Joelle, you want to add to that in terms of your definition of safe?
I think it's just to improve quality of life, like just make my life better. Like don't put any more burden on me. I already deal with complications of sickle cell, and I have Guillain-Barré. That's why I'm in the chair. I have other things that I'm dealing with as well. I don't want to take a new therapy and then have to deal with something else,
And what would be that a lot of you sort of have alluded to you don't want something else. But I think in the context of clinical trials, there's a lot of unknown. There's unknowns on the part of the people who've developed the drug, the physicians who are approaching you to participate, and you yourselves or your child, the unknown. So are there certain things that are kind of off the table in terms of if this was in question in terms of safety or in terms of side effect, or is it really sort of an individual decision?
You mean specific side effects?
Yeah, there are certain things where, because Naz was talking about, well, I might get better in this way, but if it means I'm going to get worse in this way, then that's kind of a non-starter. So I'm asking, like, are there sort of non-starters that either you or you're hearing from the community are kind of out there?
For me personally, there have been some options that were presented to me, but due to the severe side effects, my family and I decided not to pursue that option. And at the time, this was 20 years ago, a curative therapy, and it seems like everybody in that time in our community were doing that option. But as a child, seeing that some of the side effects and how it altered their lives, it really didn't, I wasn't attracted to that. Some people have been great candidates and they've, experienced, success. But for me, I just didn't want to risk that chance. Yeah. So I use it as an anecdote to say that I believe that a lot of people, like you said, it is a personal choice. There can never be a blanket, and everybody has to really weigh their options very well. Yeah. For me, I've done well without having that specific therapy implemented. But for other people, like I said, they have done well. So I really think it's an individual choice, and people just have to make sure that they're educated fully about what can happen. But like you said, for clinical trials, you may not have the data to show what could happen, or it may not be something that's, proven that could be a chance to happen. And we've seen that with some people in our community. So I really believe that people just have to make that choice. And for those that participate in clinical trials, they have to understand that they are, in some sense, offering their lives to the betterment of others in the next generation to come. So that's always a thing to really remember.
Yeah, I mean, in the context of clinical trials, I guess we're going to get to that, but are there things that you think can be done to address these concerns around safety that maybe aren't being done in your experience? Are there better ways to address that rather than focusing on what potential benefit the drug or the treatment might have? What's a better way to address these issues up front?
I think that families need the ability to have informed decision-making power. And when people are better suited to do that, then they can make a better choice for their family. And I think that comes through education, and it comes through transparency. And so I think a lot of times that when we are thinking about different therapeutic options that we may have or that are coming into next 5, 10, 15 years, transparency and education is key. If I know something may have certain side effects, it gives me an opportunity to have a dialogue with my family as to, is this going to impede my function, meaning my family function? Am I willing to risk that for whatever I believe the outcome will be? Function in our community is very important because many times we have impaired functions. So if I can get through the day, make it through the day, am I able to get up and move around the way that I need to just to have what others may believe is quote unquote normal? Right. So all of that comes into play, and I think in order to really make a choice about that, you have to have information.
Yeah, I hear you. Joelle and Naz, I'm going to ask you this next question. What can be done to encourage more participation in clinical studies?
I think we're not really able to get the information like we need to.
Okay.
I think it's a little hard for us to get the clinical studies and everything that is going on in our area. Me personally, I would love to see an app made for clinical studies and just a one-stop shop of information and be able to turn on my notifications of, hey, a new study has popped up in my area or things like that. Everybody's on their phone these days. So to be able to have that, I think would be amazing for our community, a new innovation for what's going on and what's happening.
Yeah, I mean, I like that idea about an app. It would just make it easier to get more timely information and figure out where the trials might be. And, do I have a cousin that lives in that, in that particular state? Can I stay with them for 6 or 12 months? I mean, these are real things that people would consider.
I think we called it an alert app.
An alert app, yeah, absolutely. As I think that a lot of, there are some misconceptions about the sickle cell community and how mobile it isn't. And in my experience, our people will travel.
Right.
For good care, just like any other group. And that would include clinical trials, but they need to know. Right. There needs to be this alert system or some mechanism, even if it can't be an app, I would love it to be, just to let people know.
Alert us and make us aware of what is going on.
Right.
Social media is huge these days,
The app is so much better than telling somebody to go to a website because the app is on your phone. Not everybody really gets to websites these days. I know because I try to sell things on websites.
So you need an app.
So I need an app. I think the app, it's such a great idea.
Yeah.
That's why I really, really like that idea.
Okay.
If I could also add to that, I think, as Velvet said, I really believe that participation lacks, especially in this community, because education isn't there or the information isn't there. So being able to really educate our community about what clinical trials, what clinical studies, whatever you want to call it, are and what the purpose is very crucial. And we also have to take into account for, even though this is not a Black disease, but the ethnic and the racial disparities when it comes to participating in clinical trials. So why aren't they participating? There's a, inherent mistrust.
Right.
So how do we fix that? We educate. And I think that's one of the things that should be done to encourage people to continue to participate in clinical
So educate those affected by sickle cell disease.
Absolutely.
And talk about the mistrust issue. Well, go ahead, Velvet.
In dialogue, as Andre has said, due to, our history as being a woman in the African American community, I understand, there's been many things that we as a community has had to endure. And so when it comes to trust in the medical community, it's not there as we would like it to be. And I think there has to be open and honest conversations around that. And the one thing that Andre said that I think that is essential, building trust. In order to build trust with people, you must become open yourself. They must, especially in this community, they must know that you genuinely actually care. You care for them and you care for their family, and you are partners in making sure that the best health outcome comes into play. And when parents and individuals feel like that, then they're more apt to just, let's work this out, let's see what we can do, even if you don't agree about necessarily a treatment.
Right.
The open and honest communication and a trust factor goes a long way.
Yeah, I hear that, and that seems to be a theme amongst all of you on the panel, the importance of that relationship. Now, we're talking about what can be done to encourage more participation in clinical studies. Now, for those individuals, both children and adults with sickle cell disease who are lucky enough to have a fantastic provider, like you have your medical home that you described, and sounds like it would be easier to foster that trust and have that dialogue and discourse, and to not only talk about treatments that are available now, but participating in clinical trials. It seems like it would be easier to do it that way. But what about all of the individuals with sickle cell disease in our country who we know aren't getting that type of care? What are some ideas to try to reach those individuals who could benefit from participating? Well, who might want to participate in clinical trials, and that there might be a benefit later to the greater community by that participation. How do we get to them?
I think patient testimonials is a good way. You know, for me, I trust my advocates a lot more than I trust the medical community.
Okay, so that's a different perspective, right? That's helpful.
I will trust a patient advocate or, you know, a caregiver or somebody that has been through it a lot faster than I will my doctor or, you know, my provider, just because that's a luxury what Andre has. You know, a lot of people don't have that relationship with their provider. Right. So for me, I would like to be able to hear it from different CBOs or, you know, different CBOs that I trust, different patient advocates that have been through the process and have come out on the other side.
Yeah, so community-based organizations and other advocates. Naz, you wanted to add to that?
It's an individual responsibility where we all have to feel a sense of empowerment and a sense of responsibility to want to take part in the clinical trials. For me, I'm 46, so most trials are not really open to me anymore. But when I was much younger, I took part in trials, not because I wanted to benefit from whatever the treatment was. Even if I was put in a placebo group, it was still beneficial to find out if this thing could work for the next generation that's coming behind me. Right. So for many out there, I know there are many people like me that feel the same way, that they would love to take part in a clinical trial, just to make sure that these tools are available for doctors to not only give us painkillers, but have something else to offer us.
Yeah. No, I hear you. Yes, Andre.
So very quickly, I think one thing that I believe would be beneficial for those that are sponsoring these studies to be more engaged in the community. And that's how you're going to catch the people that you want. I find it amazing that, you know, a university or institution can have a clinical study and there's no type of advertisement at all. And so they complain that no one signs up, but no one knows about it. And I've had this conversation with several investigational teams where I asked them about their advertisement budget, and they had none. And the ones that I've actually stumbled upon some trials or some studies that were promoted on social media. And I kind of inquired to that team, and they said, oh yeah, we have in our budget, we have, you know, funds just to advertise. So I believe taking advantage of the power of social media, taking advantage of advertising to your community, taking advantage of being in the community, maybe have a community fair, however you could plan it. I don't know the legal or the, you know, repercussions that may, you know, be around that, but have some type of community engagement in that community. So go to a CBO, go to their health fair, go to their blood drives. And that's really how you could probably get people, as you said, that probably wouldn't be knowledgeable about where to go.
Right, that they would see these individuals there, they would learn about it, and they would develop some trust just in that process.
Well, and I think for parents, we talk to other parents. So that's huge for us. We talk to other parents. We talk to parents that have enrolled children in certain trials, and we want feedback from them. The other thing I think that would be beneficial is I'm a social worker, so I believe in holistic information. So I'm trying to get not information just from parents, but I'm going to doctors. And then, as her said, empowerment, meaning I'm researching. So I'm gathering information for myself, I'm reading the information, and I'm going to present that to the physician, and then I'm going to talk with the parents and say, hey, how did this really work in real life? You know, in school they used to tell us we have textbooks and you have real life. So I want to see, do they match up? Right. Do they not? So those types of things I think are important.
So what are some good ways to make sure that the parents are really well informed? Because, I mean, are there social media sites that parents specifically engage on, separate from those? Yes. So tell us about that.
So for sickle cell, there are a couple of sickle cell Facebook groups specifically for, they say mommies. But we want to include daddies as well. So, because this is not just a one gender disease. So parents
Okay.
that can go and get information. And we each try to make sure that if we know about something that's coming new or down the pipeline, that we're discussing, we're posting, we're telling people where to go. We actually put the website on the page and say, go here, research, look at it.
Okay.
Because social media, as Joelle said, that's information highway.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's a really important perspective, the role of the parent and the caregiver in this process, and the fact that obviously caregivers, parents are speaking to one another about current therapies, future therapies. That makes total sense. So it sounds like social media and parents might be the area that is a bit neglected. It's not traditional, rather. It doesn't maybe not the traditional path.
There's a gap in information for parents. I think part of most people may think that all day long you're caring for a child, so you may not get the opportunity to look at information or research information. And if you're going to a doctor's appointment 10, 15 minutes, they can't give you everything that you need. And so you have to have another outlet to provide information where you can readily access it.
Yes. Okay. That makes sense. Well, the next question is a bit, I think we've discussed it a bit, but let's see. How can the community improve communications about clinical studies? Is there anything else that the community, the sickle cell community, or maybe the pharmaceutical community, the provider community?
Yeah, there's something I feel like that would open up things for all sides. It's just like, don't wait until there's a trial or something that's happening or when we're sick. But on the off times, open up your research facility. Like if you have a center, have an open house. Invite people to see the process. Invite people to get educated about what it takes before you get to a clinical trial.
Right.
Show them the sickle cell mice so they know that that these medicines, before they even get to humans, there's a process there that adds to the safety before, so they understand and not be afraid.
Right.
So have an open house and show the community what's going on.
Yeah,
This way, people have less anxiety when they show up. And
Right.
they don't want to participate. They want to take part.
Yeah, I like that idea.
And again,
Joelle?
partner with CBOs that are educating, the community, partner with different organizations that are hosting conferences and symposiums, and get into the community and show your faces and show us that you're here for us.
Yeah.
And you're here fighting with us. It goes a long way, it builds trust. So.
How important is it to be able to hear a patient testimony? Somebody had mentioned that earlier, because we heard about parent testimony, but what about another patient who's taken that medication or participated in that trial or something like it?
Yeah, I think that's huge, just because for us, if you don't have sickle cell, you're not walking in my shoes. So I can't relate to you in that way. There's no relation, there's no understanding. But someone that has sickle cell, they get it. They live with it. They understand what it is to wake up fatigued. They understand what it is to have sickle brain. So to hear a patient advocate speak on the process of what they went through and being very transparent of their experience going through the process, that holds a lot more weight than, a provider speaking about it or a pharmaceutical company speaking about it.
No, I hear you. Well, this question I'm going to ask of each of you. Andre, starting with you. What one key piece of advice do you want to give companies that are developing sickle cell products so that they can increase participation in clinical studies? So what's one key piece of advice you'd like to give companies developing sickle cell products so that they can increase participation in clinical studies?
That's, okay, I can answer that.
Okay.
As Velvet said, I am also a future social worker.
Okay.
And so our focus as social workers is, as she said, the whole man, the total man. And one thing that I always say, and most people know when you invite me to speak, I'm gonna talk about it, but you have to really be mindful of the social determinants of health, the socioeconomic factors, the barriers that come with your population. And as I said before, if we understand that, this disease specifically targets a higher number of minorities, then you should understand those socioeconomic factors that prevent some people from being able to participate, even if they were knowledgeable and interested. So for me, I believe it's very important that the advice that the company should take away is to be able to implement that into their inclusion or into their research design, to be able to provide that support for patients and their families.
So what are some examples of some of those social determinants that might?
Transportation, housing, just like you said, if it's something that you have to be in Kansas City or, somewhere for 3 or 4 months, and you just have them come and have no provision for them to be sustained while they're there. To me, that's an injustice. You could be doing great work, but if that family suffers economically, just to be able to participate, I don't think that's the best option. So that one piece of advice is to be able to really build in ways to implement being able to address those social
barriers, those social determinants. Yes. Velvet, one key piece of advice you'd like to give companies developing sickle cell products to increase participation. Sorry.
Well, Andre took my no. Anyway, I would say communication. I think that when we lack communication, we lack understanding. And in order to eliminate miscommunication, you got to communicate. And so when you are doing certain trials, coming back to the community, letting them know what's actually happening. So I think transparency is really good, honest conversations. And I think that putting people at the table beforehand. I would say, put us at the table before you get started. That may help you to avoid some pitfalls when you get down the road. So communication, I would say, is key in companies being able to have good outcomes so that people understand what's actually going on. Not just the process, but the process before the process. I like that. So having patient-centeredness, exactly. I'm hearing that it's important to have individuals affected by sickle cell disease at the table at the time that these trials are being designed. And I'm hearing that the community wants updates. Yes.
That's what I heard buried in there, that you want updates on clinical trial progress. And delivered in a fashion that people can understand clearly.
Well, and if you're working with a certain CBO, they want updates.
Yes.
So, because we have families that call us and say, have you heard anything? Is it coming out? What's going on? And if I have to tell them no, then they get a bit discouraged.
Well, what would be the best way to hold those updates, or give those updates? And I guess an app, but beyond the app, I don't know if you want to address that, Naz, but.
The thing is, since having an advisory group of patient advocates, or you may even want to hire patient advocates to do some of these legworks before all of this starts taking place. Make sure that you have somebody that is well connected in the community, that is trusted in the community, because some advocacy groups or advisory meetings that I've gone through, we are still headed by professionals and other folks. So we're only at the table as patients. But if we see that we are involved, we see people are connected to your company, then we don't see you as anti, or there's no friction there, because we are part of the same thing, working together to get to the same goal.
I see.
Because we all want these tools to help us. We do. We don't want to fight you to get something done for us. So we want to see those faces as part of your staff. We want to see those things.
Interesting. Okay. Not just being invited to participate, but being a full
member of your
the,
staff.
Of the staff.
We want to see educated, strong, people who have sickle cell that understand this pain be a member of your group.
Of your team. Yep.
Hire us.
Hire us.
Did you have anything else to add about one piece of advice, or
I agree
Joelle?
with all of them, and I support everything that they said.
Okay. Any last thoughts? We have a couple of minutes. Anything we didn't touch upon? We talked about safety. We talked about participation. We talked about trust. We talked about getting to the masses. Right. Anything else that we haven't covered that's really important as we all try to move pipeline development in the right direction and quickly?
I just want to really, emphasize what Velvet said, that the dissemination of the results and communication is something that I don't even remember receiving on any trial that I've been on. And I've inquired, and they say, well, we disseminated it on so-and-so and so-and-so, but it was a certain avenue that I specifically didn't have access to. Or it may have been something I did have access to, but it may have been like a journal or something like that. Now, for the whole population, and not saying that we're a dumb population, that's not what I'm saying, but everybody can't digest, scholarly articles. So I feel that there should be some type of plain language, layman's terms, dissemination of what you get from that. And I feel like when we're at the table, that we should demand that there should be some type of timeline that you communicate with us. And so if you say by December 1st and December 2nd's here and we haven't heard from you, then we can keep you accountable to what you said.
Okay. I think, everybody got that? Anything else? Last thoughts? You've got companies and you've got physicians and researchers out there in the audience.
Well, I just want to say on behalf of caregivers around the U.S., we appreciate the companies for diving into trying to find tools and resources for our community. It's been a long time coming, but we know change is coming.
Absolutely. Well, I want to thank each and every one of you for being open and honest. I think we had a great discussion, and they will be available during the day if you have any further questions. Thank you very much.
No question.
I would like to thank Dr. Andemariam, Velvet, Naz, Andre, and Joelle for that insightful session and for providing really thoughtful information to this audience. The podium is rocking, man. Just want you to know, if anything happens, podium is moving. It's not me. If you looked in your program and all of the marketing information that was sent out to you prior to today, you know that we had invited Dr. Lakia Bailey to join us. Unfortunately, she couldn't be here, so instead, we have Miss Dynamic Dominique Goodson standing in for Lakia. Dominique is the Special Projects Manager of the Sickle Cell Community Consortium, and Dominique will share the latest updates on the consortium's programs and events. Please join me in welcoming Dominique.
Hello, everyone. Okay, there we go. How's everyone doing? You guys sound so excited. How's everyone doing? There we go. Get a little louder. We're here for a great cause. There we go. Okay, so as Ms. Beverly said, unfortunately, Lakia was not able to make it, so I am doing her presentation. I am the Special Projects Manager for Sickle Cell Consortium. And here we go. Nothing for us without us. Remember that. That is going to be the theme of this whole presentation. Nothing for us without us. Is this the clicky? Yeah, there we go. Okay, so the mission of the Sickle Cell Consortium is a national collaborative of sickle cell warriors, caregivers, community-based organizations, research and medical advisors working collectively to equip and empower. Oh, thank you, I apologize, sorry. To empower the sickle cell community to be full participants and lead the charge in sickle cell advocacy, education, research, legislation, and policy. The Sickle Cell Consortium was founded in February 2014 at the FDA Patient and Drug Development Initiative. It became an official 501c3 August 2015. And in March of 2016, we had our first leadership summit and General Assembly. The consortium is basically a patient's voice. We bring together caregivers, CBOs, and what we basically do is these partners are their group that makes the decision of everything that we do. So it's a collective voice for the consortium. Our partners are credentialed CBOs, which are 501c3s. We also have junior CBOs, which are partners that are working to get their 501c3s. And then we also work with sponsored patient groups as well. We have independent patients and caregivers that are also credentialed with us. We have medical and research advisors who consult and work on projects with us. And we have community partners, non-specific sickle cell groups that work. And these groups come together as a General Assembly. And the General Assembly purpose is to serve as a bridge to give voice and action to the estimated 100,000 individuals living with sickle cell disease in the United States and their caregivers. Working collectively, this group will ensure that the needs and goals of the sickle cell community are identified and met. So we just don't want to identify them, we want to meet those goals as well. Every year we have our annual leadership and General Assembly. Is held in March in Atlanta. All of our credentialed partners, industry, pharma companies, we all get together and we work on best practices, research and legislative updates, just to name a few things. Every year, the Leadership Summit grows, and it's basically by word of mouth. And when we first started out, we had 70 advocates with 19 CBOs from 17 different states. This year, we had over 100 advocates representing 35 CBOs in 24 states. We also had from different countries, Canada, Kenya, and the United Kingdom. Some of our best practices that we do at the Leadership Summit, nonprofit accounting and fiscal responsibilities. We work on grant writing workshops. These classes help enable CBOs and individual patient and caregivers ways to market themselves and also how to get grants. We also have the research and legislative updates. We launch of the Clinical Trials Initiative. We have clinical trials roundtables during this. And we also have HRSA Embrace, just to name a few. We also do community updates. So with the consortium, we just don't talk about what the consortium does or just specifically about the consortium. We also go and talk with updates about other groups, such as FSCDR, SCDAA. We also have Sickle Cell Anthology, and we also do Warrior University. Our creative content and workshop lab is something new and very important to us. It was designed to increase media literacy and offering a solid foundation of basic knowledge and technique that will aid in the creation of visually appealing digital content on par with industry standards using available resources. So we had things like media law and ethics. We had actors versus real people. We had framing and shot for video. We did different things to show how creative content can help broaden CBO's brand or even an individual brand. It was very successful. A lot of people really liked it. Some of the partner services that we offered with the consortium, we have Sickle Cell Voices and Story Corps, CBO Spotlights, and we also have product merchandise photography with 610 Degrees. Our General Assembly of Patients and Caregivers, for the General Assembly, what we do is we find out what the problems are, the gaps, and what our needs for the communities are, and then we work on it together and try to bring a change about. The power of the patient voice. The patient and caregiver voice is the center of everything we do. Patients are the center, and so are the caregivers. Every project, platform, and initiative that the consortium has initiated as a direct result from patient caregivers' identified need, problem, or gap in the sickle cell community. Although we are a young organization, by working together, these collective of patients and caregivers have generated significant outcomes, demonstrating the power of the patient voice. And these are just to name a few of the patient voice outcomes. Our parent-to-parent initiative, SC3 Kids, our Sickle Man. These are just to name a few. Another one of our programs that we have every year is the Sickle Cell Patient and Family Educational Symposium. We have given over $65,000 in scholarships. As you can see, we've started in 2013 where it was the Bahamas, and it started out with just 12 people. And this year we were at Dallas, Texas, and next year we will be in Las Vegas, Nevada. So that should be fun and very interesting for all of us. It's going to be really interesting. From Patient Gathering, this actually started out as the brainchild of Tosin Ola and Lakia Bailey, of just doing a gathering, kind of like a family reunion for it. And as I say, it started out in the Bahamas with just 12 people on a cruise, and it has expanded to over 300 patients a year. So the convention, like I said, is 300 patients that attended this past July? Yes, July. And we've had over 100, we gave out over 150 scholarships this year. We had over 60 presenters. We had a paint and sip, which was a lot of fun. Pictures came out great. We had Rock the Block. We had Trait Track, which we talked about sickle cell trait because that's something else that's not really talked about in the community as well. So we had a specific trait track, and we had a children's track that they had their own little mini convention inside of a convention that was geared towards children. Here are some more of the topics we had. We had a mental health roundtable. We think that mental health is a very important topic to discuss in our community, and is one of the topics that isn't really discussed too much in our community. Traveling with sickle cell, because a lot of patients think they can't travel. Every last one of the topics that we had were topics that patients said that they wanted, so we made sure that we gave the patients what they wanted. And this symposium is put on by patients and thrown by patient and caregivers. The entire thing. We worked really extremely hard. Here are a couple of the pictures that I just love. And And our warrior team said, I love being part of this world where sickle cell is normal. And I just thought that was very profound and just so heartfelt. And then the pictures are all awesome. So look at all these great warriors. Don't they look great? Keep on fighting. Okay, so we have our parent-to-parent initiative. And the parent-to-parent initiative is it's a booklet that you can actually go online and download. But it started out because parents wanted something to give to the school, letting their kids, letting their teachers and everyone at the school know that you have a child in your class that has sickle cell. And it's a guide to help with connection, advocacy, resources, and education for both parents and for the school. This pamphlet is able to download. If you go, the website is actually there, www.facebook.com/parent-to-parent-SC3. It's an excellent guide for parents, caregivers, and even for teachers. Our patient power educational resources, this was to help define yourself and define your life. It was education material developed by patients, caregivers, for patients and caregivers. We have it in both English and in Spanish, and the content was reviewed for accuracy by the Consortium Medical Research Advisory Board. And these also are able for download, and then you are also able to actually get the books for any partners that would like them. The first slide is the parent-to-parent one. And then we have a new guide coming out, which is the bone marrow transplant and sickle cell disease, which will be released at the end of this month. That is going to be one of our new guides, focusing on the bone marrow transplant for patients and caregivers who want more information. Our mental health initiative is one that I am extremely proud of. It was identified as a patient caregiver priority during our 2016 Leadership Summit. And it was we created an online health resources clearinghouse. It identified resource gaps and barriers of access for sickle cell patients. And our mission for the mental health initiative is to provide a safe space for warriors and caregivers, because it's not just for warriors, but also for caregivers to understand and discuss the mental health concerns of our community. Our goal is to ensure that warriors, caregivers understand that they are not alone, and it's okay not to be okay. And it is okay to seek help. Warrior University, I am proud to say I am the Dean of Warrior University. Thank you very much. Thank you. Warrior University is an online curriculum-based educational platform. This is, I think, one of the most important programs that we do for the consortium. It is a continuous educational program that focuses on 4 different pillars: disease education, expert patients, CBO best practices, advocacy training. We also focus on research, legislative, and policy, and then life skills, different things that are going to help and educate patients to better advocate for themselves and to better understand sickle cell disease, so they are also able to teach others as well. These are some of the classes that we have. We did the Red Hot presented on blood transfusion. And all of our classes that we had, they are available online. All of them are recorded and they're available online. So if you weren't able to participate or join that class during that time, they are available online. Another class we had, which was sponsored by GBT, was the FDA series, where it was building your advocacy resume. Why should you get involved with FDA? Just to name a few, and those classes are also online. And then we also had the Embrace class, which Embrace is going to be an ongoing class. It was education of mentoring to bring access to care for sickle cell disease. And this, to mention, this one is with the HRSA. These are just some of the classes that we had. With Dr. Ekman, we had acute chest syndrome with Dr. Ekman. We also had bone disease and avascular necrosis. Yay, I said it right on the first try. With Dr. Ekman as well. These classes are also online. And as I stated, the Embrace classes will be an ongoing class. So, sickle cell impact on science. This is important because sickle cell was first described in Western literature in 1910 by James Herrick. And there has been, I guess, different stories predating Western literature about sickle cell disease. First, it was the immortal children in Nigeria, where they believed that the children was born over and over and over, but turns out that it might have just been sickle cell. And then also, it was believed that King Tut died from sickle cell as well. There was also proof of sickle cell trait in the Civil War, where these men were dying from fatigue and exhaustion during the Civil War. One of the publishings in 1914, Sickle Cell Anemia and Molecular Diseases. And some of the important scientific advancements that sickle cell has had on research: DNA diagnosis and predictive genetics, population, pharmacological and cellular therapies, just to name a few. And in 1993, there was a Nobel Prize in chemistry and sickle cell. And this all leads to say that research is important in sickle cell. And not just for the past, but also for the present. So we want patients and caregivers to embrace their selves. And this is why we come to patient-powered research. And we have patient-centered outcomes initiative, clinical trials initiatives, define a patient caregiver research agenda, and SC3 scholars. The Clinical Trials Work Group. We aim for the Clinical Trials Initiative work stream. This work stream is tasked with applying the collective power of the patient, caregiver, and CBO General Assembly to define patient-identified barriers to minority participation in clinical trials. Our execution for this was outreach to the minority populations outside of sickle cell through faith and football, local sporting clubs and events. We also requested that clinical trial investigators provide plain language information of each trial for ease of communication and dissemination of clinical trial information to patients, caregivers, and advocates. Patient-centered outcomes are directly involved sickle cell patients and caregivers to identify priorities for patient-centered outcomes research. And PCORI funded Compass, the community participation to advance the sickle cell story. And this is a little more about Compass. The purpose of Compass was to engage the sickle cell community, nation's network of patients, caregivers, and CBOs to capture patient-defined research priorities, to bridge the gap between research practice and true outcomes for individuals living with sickle cell disease. It was designed to support the development of research partnerships as they identify a comparative clinical effective research, questions or series of questions that is important to patients, researchers, and other members of the healthcare community. In conclusion, Sickle cell, and thus the sickle cell patient, has played a major role in advancement of scientific thought and discovery. The patient and caregiver partners of the Sickle Cell Consortium firmly believe that our voice is the most important voice in the room and should be at the center of education, advocacy, awareness, research, and legislation. We reject the idea of helplessness and have instead organized to identify the problems, needs, and gaps that we see in the community, and then create solutions to address them. Nothing for us without us. Thank you.
Thank you, Dominique. I hope that that information was helpful in understanding the work of the Sickle Cell Community Consortium. So now, one of the best parts of the day. It's lunchtime. And so lunch will be held in the Vista Terrace on the mezzanine level. You have 45 minutes for lunch, and then I'm gonna come get you, so we can regroup and start our afternoon sessions. So enjoy your lunch.